stop right now, because what you are about to hear is not just another royal scandal. This is the moment when one quiet, forgotten man in California reaches into a drawer he has kept locked for nearly a decade, pulls out a sealed envelope, and prepares to mail it directly to Buckingham Palace. And inside that envelope, according to multiple, terrifyingly credible sources, is enough documentary evidence to legally end the marriage of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, strip them of their titles, and rewrite the history of the modern monarchy. Stay with me, because you have never heard a story like this one before. The true storm threatening to tear the British monarchy from its ancient moorings is not, as you might assume, brewing in the cold stone corridors of Buckingham Palace. It is brewing thousands of miles away, under the blinding artificial sun of Southern California, behind the wrought iron gates of a 16-room Montecito mansion. In the gilded, hyper-curated corridors of the global elite, there is a commonly held belief that what you do not know cannot hurt you. That with enough money, enough public relations spin, and enough aggressive litigation, any past can be successfully rewritten, erased, polished, sold back to the world as a brand new fairy tale. But here is the thing they never tell you in those Hollywood production meetings. In the modern age of digital footprints, of expired non-disclosure agreements, of the relentless, creeping march of time, the past has a terrifying, unavoidable way of rising from the shallow grave you dug for it. And it tends to rise precisely at the moment you believe you have finally buried it deep enough. For nearly a decade, the world has been sold a meticulously crafted billion-dollar fairy tale. Listen closely to this narrative, because you have heard it 1,000 times. We were presented with the story of a self-made, fiercely independent, fiercely humanitarian biracial actress who, almost by miracle, stumbled into the path of a wounded, captive prince. She rescued him. She saved him from the cold, unfeeling machinery of a 1,000-year-old institution. She gave him love. She gave him purpose. She gave him a family. And together, they fled to America to live happily ever after. It is a beautiful story. It made millions of people fall in love with them. It sold magazines, it launched podcasts, it sealed Netflix deals worth tens of millions of dollars. There is just one small problem with this story. Behind this glossy, heavily monetized illusion, one man has been living in absolute silence. One man who knew her before she ever set foot in London. One man who paid the bills when nobody else would. One man who held her at night when the rejections came in. One man whose name has been systematically scrubbed from every approved version of the official biography. That man is Trevor Engelson, the prominent Hollywood producer who was once the primary architect, the financial backer, and the emotional anchor of Meghan Markle's early life in Los Angeles. The press has dismissed him for years as a footnote, as the so-called starter marriage, as a minor, insignificant supporting character who was meant to be forgotten the very second the Queen Mary diamond bandeau tiara was placed upon her head in the choir of St. George's Chapel. But here is where the story takes its first sharp turn, and you need to stay with me, because this is the part most commentators have completely missed. The quiet period of Trevor Engelson is officially, catastrophically, irrevocably over. As the last days of April 2026 unfold, highly credible, terrifying reports are surfacing from the deepest inner circles of the entertainment industry, and, even more importantly, from the legal corridors of Buckingham Palace. Trevor Engelson, after years of disciplined silence, has finally reached his absolute breaking point. He is no longer willing to be the invisible ghost in the royal machine. And let me make this abundantly clear, because the Sussex public relations team will absolutely try to spin it the other way. This is not a bitter ex-husband seeking a cheap tabloid payday. This is not a reality television contract. This is not a fleeting 15 minutes of fame. This is the calculated, methodical action of a man who feels he has been systematically erased from his own life story, professionally sabotaged by whispers in Hollywood, and publicly humiliated by the very woman he once loved and supported through her darkest, most invisible years. Take yourself back to the moment it ended. Picture the scene. Meghan, having abruptly moved her entire life to Toronto to film a cable television drama, eventually crossed the Atlantic to London to capture, by her own admission, the kind of life she had only dreamed of as a young actress. And Trevor was famously, brutally, almost cinematically left behind. The legend, told and retold in Hollywood circles for years, is that he received a FedEx box. Inside the box, his returned wedding ring. No phone call, no conversation, no farewell. Just a parcel and a career that almost overnight suddenly felt as though it were under an invisible, suffocating siege. For years, he watched in disciplined, professional silence as the official narrative of the Duchess of Sussex was aggressively crafted and sold to a gullible global audience. He watched her portray herself as a victim of a rigid, racist institution. He watched her cast herself as an innocent woman hunted by a predatory press. He watched her position herself as the paragon of modern feminist virtue. And he, the man who had actually shared a marital home with her, said nothing. Not for one news cycle, not for one interview, not for one attempted memoir, nothing. But those who knew Trevor intimately during his marriage to the future Duchess say he saw a profoundly different woman, a different version, a version that does not match the polished public relations character now being marketed to the world. And here is where it gets interesting. Now, in what is shaping up to be the most devastating public reckoning of the entire 21st century, Trevor Engelson is reportedly coming forward. With what? With a massive, incontrovertible dossier of raw, unedited evidence designed to blow a catastrophic hole straight through the middle of the Sussex brand. This is not a tweet thread. This is not a podcast interview. This is, by every credible report, a formal declaration of war. And the target of this war is not merely Meghan's fragile Hollywood reputation or her standing among the wealthy elites of Montecito. The target is the very legal, moral, and constitutional foundation of her standing with the British Crown itself. Because Trevor is not, despite what you might assume, talking to reporters. He is not shopping a manuscript to publishing houses. He is, allegedly, preparing to present his findings, fully authenticated and legally sound, directly to the highest legal authorities within Buckingham Palace itself. He is acting, in the words of one senior royal source, as the ultimate executioner of a public image that he claims was built entirely on a towering, precarious series of elaborate omissions and outright deceptions. And here is the question that should be keeping the Duchess of Sussex awake at night. What combination of photographs, documents, and digital records could possibly be so inherently damaging that it would make the ancient, unshakable gates of the palace tremble? What evidence could be powerful enough to force the King of the United Kingdom to reconsider the very legitimacy of his own son's marriage? Stay with me. Because the answer is more shocking than anything you have ever read in a tabloid. The unraveling, according to those familiar with the contents of the dossier, begins with a chapter of Meghan's life that vastly predates the glamour of Hollywood. It predates her supporting role on the legal drama Suits. It certainly predates her heavily televised walk down the aisle of St. George's Chapel. For years, dark, persistent whispers have circulated in the hidden, unmoderated corners of the internet. Whispers suggesting that Meghan's highly publicized marriage to Trevor Engelson was not actually her second serious relationship. It was, in fact, her third legal union. Read that sentence again. Her third legal union. The story, long dismissed by the mainstream press as the toxic byproduct of internet trolls, points back to her time as a young student at Northwestern University in the late 1990s. During this period, a 19-year-old Meghan was reportedly involved in a short, highly impulsive, and ultimately buried first marriage to a fellow student or local acquaintance, a youthful mistake. The kind of thing that, if disclosed openly, would have been forgiven by the public in a heartbeat, but hidden, concealed from the most stringent vetting process on earth? That is no longer a youthful mistake. That is something else entirely. And here is where you need to lean in. because this is the part most people have completely failed to grasp. If this specific monumental claim is proven true by the hard documentation allegedly sitting in Trevor's possession, it elevates the situation from a minor, embarrassing tabloid scandal into a matter of absolute constitutional crisis. It represents a catastrophic systemic failure of the royal vetting process. A security clearance process that is widely supposed to be the most stringent, the most unforgiving, the most deeply penetrating background check in the entire civilized world. When a commoner is proposed to marry into the direct line of succession to the British throne, the vetting process is not, as Hollywood likes to imagine, a simple internet search. It is not a standard corporate background check. It is, in the most accurate description, a deep tissue, forensic, multi-agency intelligence investigation. It is conducted by the operatives of MI5 and MI6. Every single stone of the applicant's life is turned over and scrutinized. Legal specialists, royal historians, the highest echelons of the British security services. They are explicitly tasked with uncovering every hidden secret, every unpaid debt, every questionable association, every previous legal union, to ensure that the individual poses absolutely no risk to the stability, the dignity, and the security of the crown. So how, you must be asking, how could a secret legally binding marriage completely escape the notice of one of the most sophisticated intelligence apparatuses on the planet? The prevailing theory within intelligence circles is genuinely chilling. It suggests that the youthful union ended in a rapidly sealed annulment, a legal maneuver executed perhaps in another state or jurisdiction, a maneuver designed to completely wipe the event from accessible public civil records. But Trevor Engelson, having shared a life of profound intimacy with Meghan during her transitional years, reportedly knows the precise, unredacted details of this early connection. He allegedly holds the exact evidentiary threads that the British intelligence services somehow missed. Or, and this is the version that has the palace shaking, were explicitly ordered to ignore by members of the royal household terrified of upsetting a volatile young prince. To fully understand the gravity of this allegation, you have to understand the absolute mechanics of royal trust. The monarchy is an institution built entirely on precedent, on tradition, on the unassailable integrity of the sovereign's word. If Meghan entered the royal family on a fundamentally false premise, deliberately and consciously hiding a previous legal union from Her late Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II, and from the Archbishop of Canterbury himself, it would not be viewed as a socially awkward omission. It would not be filed away as an embarrassing footnote. It would be legally classified as a purposeful, premeditated deceit committed against the state itself. When you stand before the altar at St. George's Chapel, you are not just making a vow to a man. You are making a legal declaration before the Supreme Governor of the Church of England. To lie in that arena is to commit an act of institutional fraud that strikes directly at the very heart of royal legitimacy. Rumors leaking from deep within the palace architecture suggest a terrifying reason why such a massive vulnerability might have slipped through the intelligence net. Insiders allege that Prince Harry, completely consumed by his infatuation, driven by a deep-seated, almost paranoid fear of losing Meghan, exerted massive, unrelenting pressure on the senior courtiers and intelligence officers to dramatically speed up the vetting process in late 2017. Harry was reportedly so fiercely protective, so eager to shield his future wife from the prying, investigative eyes of the establishment, that he aggressively demanded certain standard, rigorous protocols be bypassed entirely. And here is where the strategy becomes truly damning. He allegedly weaponized the narrative of institutional racism and snobbery. He threatened to create a massive public relations disaster if the palace dug too deeply into the background of a biracial American woman. The palace machinery, inherently terrified of a scandal that could paint them as bigoted or unwelcoming in the modern era, tragically backed down. They softened their gaze, they closed certain files early, they moved on. This single capitulation, this one moment of institutional weakness, created a massive legal and security loophole that is only now, in March 2026, threatening to collapse the entire structure of the Sussex marriage. By aggressively hiding her past, Meghan did not just protect her carefully curated image. She, allegedly, created a genuine national security risk for the British state. Because here is a fact every intelligence officer will tell you. A woman with a secret, undocumented history is a woman who can be manipulated, extorted, leveraged by outside forces, by hostile intelligence agencies, by wealthy benefactors with hidden agendas. This is the precise hidden danger that Trevor Engelson is reportedly dangling over the palace gates. The absolute documented proof that the monarchy was systematically lied to at the highest possible level, and that the prince they sought to protect was the very instrument of that deception. But hold on, because as deep and damaging as the secret marriage rumors go, there is a secondary allegation within Trevor's rumored dossier that carries even heavier moral and emotional weight. An allegation that, if brought into the light of day, would instantly and permanently turn global public opinion against the Duchess, irrevocably destroying her most lucrative, most fiercely guarded brand asset. Intertwined tightly with the rumors of a sealed, annulled first marriage is a much darker, far more sinister, utterly explosive theory: the existence of a child, born from that early, hidden union. Take a breath, because this is the part of the story that has caused even the most hardened royal correspondents to fall silent. For years, anonymous sources, highly redacted forum posts, and fragmentary pieces of circumstantial evidence have pointed toward a daughter who was allegedly given up for adoption, or perhaps placed quietly with distant family members in order to clear the path, in order to make room for a young, fiercely ambitious actress whose desire for fame would not tolerate the encumbrance of motherhood. Names like Joe Giuliano have frequently surfaced in these unverified, deeply buried theories. Amateur online sleuths have continuously pointed to sealed medical records, strangely altered timelines from the late 1990s and early 2000s, and inconsistencies that have never been fully or satisfactorily explained by Meghan's representatives. While the mainstream legacy media has consistently and purposely ignored these specific claims, dismissing them as the toxic, unverified byproduct of tabloid trash, misogyny, and internet trolls, Trevor Engelson occupies a completely unique position in the history of this narrative. Apart from Meghan herself, Trevor was the only person who would have been in a position to hear the unvarnished truth during their many years together. They shared a home, they shared a life, they shared financial burdens, and they shared the kind of deep, late-night secrets that couples inevitably reveal to one another before the ambition curdles the love. If this horrifying allegation were to be proven true by the documentation Trevor is allegedly preparing to release, it would completely, instantly, and irreversibly shatter the core identity Meghan has spent millions of dollars constructing for herself. Think about it for a moment. She has positioned herself as the ultimate empathetic champion of modern motherhood. Her heartfelt, highly publicized speeches about Archie and Lilibet, her podcast discussing the deep emotional struggles of parenting, her entire global philanthropic brand, all of it rests entirely on the carefully projected image of a fiercely nurturing, endlessly compassionate mother who would sacrifice absolutely anything to protect the safety and privacy of her children. But the sudden documented revelation of a firstborn child allegedly abandoned, hidden, or legally erased in the ruthless singular quest for Hollywood fame and social elevation, that would transform her standing in the blink of an eye. She would instantly plummet from being a figure of global sympathy and feminist admiration. She would crash into being a figure of deep, terrifying, sociopathic deceit. The sheer magnitude of the hypocrisy would be utterly unforgivable in the eyes of the public, particularly among the core demographic of mothers who have passionately defended her against her critics. The narrative of the victimized, loving mother would be exposed as the most grotesque, calculated performance of her entire acting career. And then there is Harry. Oh, Harry. For Prince Harry, the revelation of this specific secret would be the ultimate world-destroying betrayal. Because Harry is a man whose entire defining identity has been built on the fierce, almost paranoid protection of his family. He is a man profoundly shaped, continually haunted by the trauma of losing his own mother at a young, vulnerable age. He has spoken endlessly, in books and interviews and documentaries about breaking the cycle of generational pain, about ensuring his children never feel abandoned, about ensuring they never feel unprotected. To discover, after burning every bridge to his past, that the woman for whom he sacrificed his royal birthright, his country, and his only brother had allegedly made the exact opposite choice with her own flesh and blood. That would be a moral atomic bomb. It would completely and utterly destroy his entire understanding of who his wife actually is. Revealing that the empathy she mirrored back to him during their early courtship was nothing more than a carefully constructed mirage, a mirage designed to capture his wounded heart. But hold on, because we still have more ground to cover, and the next allegation may be the most explosive of all. There is a phrase that has become an absolute, unmitigated nightmare for the Sussex public relations team whenever it is whispered in Hollywood circles: the yacht girl past. This charge is not, despite what defenders will claim, about a young, attractive woman attending a fun summer party in her 20s. This charge strikes at the very core essence of her ambition and the highly specific, transactional methods she allegedly utilized to climb the greasy, unforgiving Hollywood ladder long before she ever landed a steady, paying role on cable television. Trevor Engelson's explosive dossier reportedly includes granular, undeniable details of a time when Meghan was a frequent, requested visitor on luxury super yachts, cruising the Mediterranean and the Persian Gulf. And here is what most viewers do not understand. In these ultra-elite, heavily guarded circles of the global super-rich, the term networking is very often a polite, sanitized euphemism for something much more complex and deeply transactional. We are talking about an atmosphere entirely shielded from the press, where highly influential international bankers, technology billionaires, foreign business moguls, and global power brokers casually trade career opportunities, financial backing, and exclusive access in exchange for the companionship of ambitious, beautiful young women. Engelson has allegedly hinted to close business associates that he possesses firsthand, irrefutable information regarding this specific period of her life. The rumors suggest he holds actual guest lists, private, unreleased photographs, flight manifests, sworn witness testimonies, a complete forensic record that paints a stark, undeniable picture of a young Meghan. Not as a struggling, idealistic artist relying purely on her talent and feminist principles, but as a highly calculated woman who was willing to do absolutely whatever it took, associate with whomever she needed to get physically and socially close to the centers of immense wealth and power. This specific allegation is incredibly potent, incredibly dangerous, because it strikes directly at the moral purity and feminist superiority Meghan currently presents to the world. She aggressively positions herself as a fierce advocate for women's rights, a woman of deep substance who rose to the pinnacle of global society through sheer hard work, towering intellect, and unbreakable grit. But if her initial rise out of obscurity was actually accelerated and funded by associations that are in direct, undeniable opposition to those very feminist values, her entire brand narrative collapses completely under the crushing weight of its own hypocrisy. It proves that the empowering speeches are merely a script, written after the fact, to sanitize the climb. For the British royal family, currently watching this crisis unfold in early March 2026, this is exactly the kind of undeniable institutional ammunition they have needed for years. Think about it. The contemporary monarchy has spent decades and millions of pounds desperately trying to distance itself from the sleaze of the 1990s. From the horrific ongoing scandals involving Prince Andrew's highly transactional relationships with convicted criminals, the undeniable, documented proof of a newly minted duchess possessing a deep, hidden history in these specific, compromised yacht circles offers a readily understood, morally justified reason for the palace to take quick, decisive, and final action. It instantly transforms a messy, emotional, celebrity family feud into a legitimate constitutional crisis of character and institutional integrity. It allows the king to act, not as a punitive father, but as a protector of the crown, the most sympathetic, the most defensible position any sitting monarch can occupy. But Here is the part that should genuinely terrify the Sussex camp. Trevor Engelson's leverage does not stop at personal memories and old photographs. It extends deep into the digital realm. Long before she was a duchess, before she was a fixture in the British tabloids, Meghan was a moderately successful lifestyle blogger. Her website, The Tig, was her digital diary, a carefully curated, heavily filtered space where she aggressively projected her image as a sophisticated, wealthy world traveler, a humanitarian, a high-end tastemaker. But the very moment her relationship with Prince Harry became serious, the site was violently scrubbed from the internet, taken down with a suddenness that erased years of content. For most casual observers at the time, this was seen as a standard, expected royal move, a necessary, albeit sad, step to ensure security, guarantee privacy. Adhere strictly to the palace protocol that working royals do not engage in personal commercial endorsements. However, digital forensic experts and seasoned Hollywood insiders have long suggested that the scrubbing of the TIG was much more surgical, much more desperate, much more comprehensive than a simple routine deletion. Trevor Engelson, having been there during the creation and operation of the site, reportedly has full access to the raw data, the back-end servers, the hundreds of unpublished, unedited drafts of that era. These so-called TIG archives allegedly show a woman already in the aggressive, methodical process of pruning her history, carefully deleting contradictions, rewriting her past, fabricating a persona years before she ever stepped foot on London soil. These hidden archives reportedly contain undeniable evidence of associations, naked ambitions, and calculated social climbing plans that violently clash with the innocent, reluctant royal persona she adopted later for the cameras. They reportedly show a woman who was obsessed with British royalty, who studied the family dynamics, who meticulously planned her entry into elite circles. Completely destroying her later, infamous claim that she barely knew who Prince Harry was when they met on a blind date. They show, in essence, a precise, cold-blooded blueprint for reinvention. If Trevor releases these lost, unedited digital files to the palace or the public, it would definitively prove a long-standing pattern of behavior. A highly strategic, emotionally detached use of people, causes, and platforms to advance her social standing. It would prove to the world, and, more importantly, to the British Parliament, that her entry into the royal family was not a magical, serendipitous love story that happened by chance, but the final, triumphant act of a long-planned, ruthlessly executed performance, where Harry was merely the ultimate prize to be won. The suffocating pressure from these looming, catastrophic disclosures has reportedly already penetrated the thick, heavily fortified walls of the Sussex's sprawling Montecito estate. For years, Harry and Meghan have presented an impenetrable, totally united front to the world, an us-against-them narrative that has kept their rapidly shrinking fan base fiercely loyal and entirely blind to the cracks in the facade. But insiders, staff members, and former confidants suggest that this cohesive front is finally, violently beginning to fracture under the unbearable weight of the past rushing up to meet them. The Duke of Sussex is allegedly existing in a state of increasing, paralyzing psychological shock, as the sheer enormity of what he did not know begins to surface in his daily life. Reports have leaked to high-level British outlets of massive, wall-shaking arguments breaking out between the couple in the early weeks of March 2026. These are not minor domestic squabbles. They are described as brutal, tear-filled confrontations, where Harry has reportedly demanded the absolute, unvarnished truth about the glaring omissions in her history, holding up the very rumors that Engelson is threatening to expose. Consider the terrifying psychological minefield Prince Harry is currently attempting to navigate. He did not just leave his family for Meghan, he actively went to war with them. He gave up his highly prestigious, beloved military titles. He gave up his childhood home of Frogmore Cottage. He gave up his country, his friends. He completely destroyed his relationship with his only brother, the future king, all to protect his wife from what he deeply, genuinely believed were predatory, racist, and completely unfounded forces in the British media and the palace establishment. His entire decision to leave the royal family was framed, both to himself and to the world, entirely as an act of noble, heroic protection. A desperate, necessary way to save his wife from suffering the same tragic fate at the hands of the media machine that he blames for his mother's untimely death. But what happens to the psyche of a man when he slowly, painfully realizes that the predatory forces he was fighting were not actually making things up? What happens to his sanity when he realizes that the British press, the very institution he loathes with every fiber of his being, was actually just uncovering the suppressed truth of her own history? If the relentless attacks on her character are not the result of a hostile, bigoted press, but a completely natural journalistic response to a massive pattern of profound dishonesty and hidden scandals, Harry's entire worldview violently collapses. He is forced to ask himself the most agonizing question of his life. Was he a savior? A white knight riding to the rescue of a damsel in distress? Or was he just a highly valuable, incredibly gullible, emotionally damaged piece in a much longer, much more intricate game of blind ambition? This profound internal struggle is allegedly causing Harry to feel like he is trapped in a brand new kind of cage, one constructed entirely out of his wife's secrets and his own misplaced trust. If their own origin story, the very foundation of their brand, is a carefully constructed fake, how can they ever hope to build a future based on the authenticity they constantly, hypocritically preach to the world? The relationship is rapidly moving from a fairy tale romance into a dark, paranoid battlefield of doubt, suspicion, and bitter blame. Harry is reportedly spending more time away from the main house, isolating himself in the guest quarters, removing his wedding ring during tense arguments, and realizing finally that the freedom he sought in California is actually a deeply isolating form of exile, built on a bed of lies. But while the Sussexes deal with their internal psychological collapse in California, the royal institution in London is reportedly moving with the icy, relentless precision of a military operation. Trevor Engelson's unprecedented decision to bypass the tabloid media entirely and provide this highly sensitive information directly to the palace changes the game completely and permanently. For years, King Charles has had to delicately dance around global public opinion, trying carefully to manage the endless, exhausting fallout of Megxit. Without looking like a cruel, vengeful father punishing his wayward, traumatized son, the king has always preferred the path of diplomacy, leaving the door slightly ajar, in the faint hope of a future reconciliation. He is, by nature, a forgiving man, a gentle man, a man whose entire reign has been defined by the desire to heal old wounds. But the Engelson dossier provides the crown with exactly what it has been desperately searching for since the Oprah interview: a rock-solid, irrefutable basis for decisive action that is fact-based, legally documented, entirely institutional rather than emotional and personal. If the dossier conclusively proves that a fundamental, calculated deceit was committed against the monarchy during the highly sensitive security vetting process prior to the royal wedding, the king has a clear, unassailable, constitutionally mandated legal path to strip them of their titles. It would not be seen by the British public or by the Commonwealth as an act of petty spite. It would be received as a necessary, unavoidable correction, required to protect the legal, moral, and historical standards of the crown. It frames the king not as an angry father, but as the dutiful protector of the realm against an infiltrator. While King Charles holds the ultimate sovereign power to execute this decision, it is the Prince of Wales, Prince William, who is reportedly leading the charge, demanding action behind the scenes. Prince William has never been a fan of the Sussexes' relentless, weaponized, truth-telling media blitz. He has borne the brunt of their public attacks with a stoic, almost agonizing silence. But his concerns have now shifted dramatically, from personal annoyance and brotherly betrayal to the very survival and sanctity of the institution he is destined to lead. For William and Catherine, who have dedicated their entire adult lives to duty, the stakes could not be higher. They are the future of the monarchy. They are the ones who will be left to clean up the toxic, radioactive mess left behind by this transatlantic fallout. It is heavily and credibly rumored in elite London circles that William is actively, forcefully urging his father to take the ultimate nuclear option in March of 2026. To use Trevor's verified evidence to permanently and legally sever all titular, representational, and financial ties with the Sussexes, once and for all. William clearly sees the immense compounding damage being done to the institution every single day that these rumors go unaddressed. Every day that the Sussexes continue to trade on their royal association for commercial gain, he knows, deeply and instinctively, that a monarchy that is seen as weak, a monarchy that covers up for a member who blatantly lied to the state to secure a marriage, is a monarchy that is rapidly losing its moral legitimacy in the eyes of the people. For the Prince of Wales, this is no longer about sibling rivalry. That ship sailed long ago. This is about actively protecting the throne for his own children. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, Prince Louis. He wants the Sussex issue cauterized, surgically removed, permanently sealed, before it can further tarnish the crown's image in the history books and complicate his future reign. Trevor Engelson's dossier is exactly the sharp, undeniable tool William needs to finally convince his father that mercy is no longer an option, that endless patience is a liability, and that only complete absolute amputation will save the body of the monarchy from the spreading infection. The legal mechanism for this execution already exists, sitting quietly in the annals of British law, the Titles Deprivation Act of 1917. This is a severe, highly consequential piece of legislation that allows the monarch, with the backing of Parliament, to remove peerage titles from those who have acted in a manner deemed inimical to the interests of the crown. Historically, it has been reserved for cases of actual treason, or for royals who sided with enemy nations during wartime. However, top constitutional legal experts in London suggest that the definition of inimical behavior could easily and legally be expanded to include high-level, deliberate, and documented deception during a state vetting process for a royal marriage, coupled with a sustained campaign to damage the institution globally. By stripping the titles using this specific historical act, King Charles would not just be punishing his son, he would be performing a massive, necessary institutional reset. The Sussex brand, which is currently worth millions of dollars in California corporate deals, speaking engagements, and streaming contracts, relies entirely on the illusion of royal prestige. If the titles are revoked, that brand vanishes literally overnight. Netflix would have no reason to renew contracts. Publishers would demand their advances back. They would be left as just Harry and Meghan. Private citizens, with a heavily tarnished, fully exposed past that has finally, inescapably caught up to them, stripped of the very armor they used to conquer Hollywood. And the fallout in the entertainment industry is already beginning to manifest as these rumors reach the executive suites of Los Angeles. In Hollywood, perception is reality. And the perception of Meghan Markle is rapidly shifting. From a powerful, influential global icon to a massive, uncontrollable liability. Major talent agencies are reportedly holding emergency meetings to assess the potential blast radius if the Engelson dossier is made public. High-profile celebrities who once eagerly aligned themselves with the Sussexes for the reflected glow of royal prestige are now quietly, swiftly backing away. Terrified of being caught in the crossfire of a scandal involving secret marriages, abandoned children, and fabricated histories. The freezing out has begun, not with a public denunciation, but with unreturned phone calls, revoked invitations to elite galas, a sudden, chilling lack of interest in their production pitches. The town that once rolled out its red carpet is quietly, methodically rolling it back up. Ultimately, this impending crisis is not just a personal conflict between an aggrieved, long-forgotten ex-husband and his famous former wife. It is a massive, historic reckoning. A brutal confrontation between the meticulously manicured billion-dollar Sussex public relations brand and a dark, complex history that absolutely refuses to remain undisturbed in the shadows. Meghan Markle is a woman who has masterfully perfected the art of the rebrand, shifting seamlessly from a struggling Hollywood actress to a revered royal duchess to a wealthy global humanitarian. In a matter of a few short years, she has built an empire on the assertion of her own truth. But every building, no matter how beautiful the facade, is only as strong as its foundation. And if that foundation is built on omissions, on altered timelines, on hidden marriages, on deep, dark secrets, it was always destined to crumble into dust when the wind blew hard enough. The profound, terrifying silence currently emanating from their sprawling Montecito mansion as March 2026 marches on says more than a polished, multi-page public relations statement ever could. It is the silence of a bunker. Anticipating a direct hit, it hints at deep, structural fissures within the marriage. Fissures simply too deep to fix with therapy or a joint podcast appearance. It points to a royal endgame that is finally, undeniably in sight. An endgame where the House of Windsor reclaims its dignity by exposing the fraud that allegedly infiltrated its ranks. As the world watches and waits, with bated breath, for the next disclosure from the Engelson files to leak to the press or be formally acknowledged by the palace, one thing is absolutely certain. The era of the uncontested, dominant Sussex narrative is officially over. Trevor Engelson has unlocked a heavy iron door that cannot be closed. And the devastating information flowing through it is fundamentally changing the way the world sees the Duchess of Sussex forever. For Prince Harry, the road ahead is incredibly lonely, deeply uncertain, fraught with the painful realization of his own catastrophic mistakes. He is a man who burned every single bridge behind him, alienating his family, alienating his country, only to find that the destination he fought so incredibly hard to reach was not a sanctuary of love and freedom, but a mirage built on lies. For King Charles, the path is one of heavy, sorrowful duty over family loyalty, a tragic requirement to act as a monarch rather than a father, to save the legacy of his own mother. And for Meghan, the ultimate, perhaps insurmountable challenge will be whether she can survive the unvarnished, documented truth of her own past being presented to the world. Without the protective shield of the royal crest, the game is no longer about securing Hollywood fame, scoring royal titles, or controlling the daily media narrative. It is about the truth. It is about the absolute, unavoidable reality of history. And in the end, as the walls of Montecito close in, and the palace in London prepares its final strike, the truth is, the only thing in this entire saga that cannot be reinvented. The ghost in the machine has spoken. The fairy tale is officially over. And the chapter that begins with the opening of Trevor Engelson's locked drawer is the chapter that will rewrite everything you thought you knew about the Sussexes for the rest of your life. Stay close, because the next 48 hours of this story are about to make global headlines.